The transport ship Cerberus cut through the black void of space like a knife through flesh. Its hull gleamed with alien metal that humans had never seen before. Inside the cramped prisoner hold, 50 human beings sat in chains that burned their skin with each movement. The air tasted of fear and metal. Captain Jake Morrison pressed his back against the cold wall and studied the faces around him. These were not criminals or outcasts. They were Earth's finest, soldiers who had fought in 3 wars, scientists who had built the first starships, engineers who had carved cities from dead planets. All of them had one thing in common now. They were about to die for someone else's entertainment. The woman across from him had scars running down her left cheek like lightning frozen in flesh. Lisa Carter had been the best sniper in the Marine Corps before the aliens came. Her hands never shook, not even now with death waiting at the end of their journey. She caught Jake looking at her and nodded once. No words passed between them, but he understood. If they were going to die, they would not die easy. Sam Rodriguez sat 2 rows behind them. The Army Ranger kept his eyes on the alien guards who stood at each door. 4 of them, tall as basketball players but thin like stretched rubber. Their skin looked like green leather and their eyes glowed yellow in the dim light. They carried weapons that could turn a man into dust with one shot. Sam had seen it happen during the capture. The ship shuddered as it dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Through the small windows, Jake could see a green and brown planet growing larger by the second. 2 moons hung in the purple sky like dead eyes watching their approach. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor. A door hissed open and the largest alien Jake had ever seen walked into the hold. This one stood 8 feet tall and wore armor that looked like it had been carved from black diamond. Scars covered his face and arms like a map of every battle he had ever fought. His name was Vextar, commander of the prison ship and master of the hunt. The alien activated a device on his wrist, and when he spoke, a machine translated his words into English. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together in a metal drum. Humans of Earth, you have been chosen for a great honor. For 3,000 years my people have ruled this galaxy. We have conquered 1,000,000 worlds and made slaves of 1,000,000,000 species. But conquest grows boring after so many centuries. We need new entertainment. Vextar walked slowly between the rows of prisoners. His yellow eyes studied each face like a buyer examining cattle at market. Some humans looked away. Others stared back with hate burning in their eyes. On the world below us lies the greatest hunting preserve in the galaxy. Jungles that stretch for 1,000 miles, mountains that scrape the clouds, deserts where the sand moves like living things. And in this wilderness, the finest warriors of my race practice their skills on living prey. A woman in the back row started to cry. Dr. Amanda Brooks had been a field medic on the colony world of New Texas. She had saved more lives than she could count. Now she sat in chains waiting to become sport for creatures she had never harmed. You were not chosen at random, Vextar continued. Each of you has military training or survival skills. You have fought wars and lived through hardship. This makes you worthy opponents for our Shadow Blades. Jake felt his blood turn to ice. He had heard stories about the Shadow Blades during the war. Elite killers who could move without sound and strike without warning. They had wiped out entire human settlements in single nights. Now 50 humans would face them in combat designed for their entertainment. The rules are simple, the alien commander said. You will be released into the preserve at dawn. You will have basic survival gear in 12 hours before the hunt begins. Survive for 7 days and you will earn your freedom. Fail, and your heads will join the thousands that decorate our halls of victory. Carl Jensen, a demolitions expert from the Space Marines, spat on the floor near Vextar's feet. What makes you think we'll run? Maybe we'll stand and fight. The alien threw back his head and made a sound like breaking glass. Jake realized it was laughter. Many species have tried to fight the Shadow Blades. Their bones litter the preserve. You humans are no different from the others. When death comes for you, you will run like all prey runs. You don't know humans very well, Jake said quietly. Vextar turned his glowing eyes toward the captain. I know enough. I have studied your people since first contact. You are weak creatures who fight among yourselves over scraps of land and drops of water. You have no unity, no strength of purpose. The shadow blades will pick you off one by one, until none remain. Maybe, Jake replied. But maybe you're wrong. The ship's engines changed pitch as they entered the planet's atmosphere. Through the windows, Jake could see vast forests stretching to every horizon. Somewhere down there, the most dangerous killers in the galaxy waited for their arrival. Vextar moved toward the door. Before leaving, he turned back to address the prisoners one final time. In 6 hours, you will understand what it means to be prey. The Shadow Blades have never failed to claim their quarry. You will not be the first to escape them. The door closed with a metallic clang, leaving the humans alone with their thoughts and fears. But Jake noticed something the alien commander had missed. Instead of despair, he saw determination in the faces around him. These were not ordinary people. They were warriors, healers, and builders who had carved humanity's place among the stars. Lisa Carter caught his eye again and smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. It was the expression of a predator recognizing another predator. Sam Rodriguez cracked his knuckles and began studying the chains that held them. Dr. Brooks wiped away her tears and started checking the injuries of prisoners around her. The Cerberus continued its descent toward the hunting grounds below. In the ship's belly, 50 humans prepared to show the galaxy what Earth's children could do when cornered by those who mistook mercy for weakness. The landing shuttle crashed through the jungle canopy like a falling star. Metal screamed against wood as ancient trees snapped under the weight of alien technology. When the ship finally stopped moving, it sat buried nose-deep in a crater of torn earth and broken vegetation. Jake Morrison pulled himself from the wreckage and counted heads. 47 humans had survived the landing. 3 had died when the shuttle's hull cracked open during the crash. The aliens had not bothered, with safety harnesses for their prey. Lisa Carter emerged from the twisted metal with a gash across her forehead, but her rifle intact. She had managed to grab one of the guards' weapons during the chaos of the crash. The plasma rifle hummed with deadly energy in her hands. "Equipment check," Jake ordered, as the survivors gathered in the shadow of the wrecked shuttle. "What do we have?" Sam Rodriguez dragged a supply crate from the burning wreckage. Inside were water purification tablets, basic medical supplies, and 3 survival knives. Enough gear for maybe 10 people, not 47. Dr. Amanda Brooks knelt beside the 3 dead humans and closed their eyes. "We can't bury them properly," she said quietly. "The ground is too hard and we don't have tools." "We don't have time, either," Jake replied. "The 12-hour grace period started when we hit the ground. The shadow blades will be coming soon." Carl Jensen studied the jungle around them with the eyes of a man who had fought in 3 wars. "This terrain will work, for us if we use it right. Thick cover, lots of hiding places, natural choke points." Tony Martinez pointed toward a column of smoke rising in the distance. "Another crash site. Looks like they split us up on purpose." "Smart," Lisa said as she checked the charge on her stolen weapon. "Smaller groups are easier to hunt, but they made one mistake." "What's that?" Sam asked. "They think we're going to run and hide like frightened animals. They don't know we're soldiers." Jake looked around at the faces staring back at him. Some showed fear, but all of them showed determination. These were people who had volunteered to explore space, to build colonies on dead worlds, to defend Earth from threats they couldn't even imagine. Fear would not break them. "We split into teams of 8, he decided. Each team takes a different direction. If you make contact with other survivors, combine forces. If you encounter shadow blades, kill them and take their equipment." "Rules of engagement?" Tony asked. "There are no rules. They want to hunt us for sport. We're going to show them what happens when humans go to war." The teams formed quickly. Jake took Lisa, Sam, Carl, Dr. Brooks, and 3 others. They pushed deeper into the jungle while the other groups scattered in different directions. Behind them, the shuttle continued to burn and send a black pillar of smoke into the purple sky. The jungle was a living nightmare. Plants with thorns, like razors, blocked their path. Insects the size of small birds swarmed around their heads. The air itself seemed thick enough to chew, heavy with moisture and the smell of things growing and dying. After 2 hours of hard travel, they found the river. Fast-moving water cut a channel through the green wall of vegetation. On the far bank, something large splashed and disappeared beneath the surface. "Water's clean," Dr. Brooks announced after testing it with their purification tablets. "But I don't recommend swimming." Lisa had taken point position when the attack came. She was 50 yards ahead of the main group, moving through the undergrowth with the silent grace of a predator. The first sign of danger was the sudden silence that fell over the jungle. No bird calls, no insect noise. Even the wind through the leaves seemed to hold its breath. Lisa dropped to one knee and raised her weapon. Through the scope, she could see nothing but green shadows and dappled sunlight. But something was wrong. The shadows were moving in patterns that had nothing to do with wind or natural light. "Contact front," she whispered into her radio. "Something's out there." Jake signaled for the team to take cover. They spread out behind trees and fallen logs, weapons ready. Carl armed 2 of his improvised explosives and held them ready to throw. The shadow blade materialized from nothing like smoke, taking solid form. One moment, empty jungle. The next, 8 feet of armored death standing 20 yards from Lisa's position. Its camouflage system bent light around its body until it looked like a heat shimmer on a hot day. The alien hunter raised its weapon toward Sam's hiding place. It had tracked them for miles without being detected. Now it would claim the first of many trophies. Lisa's shot took the shadow blade in the center of its chest. The plasma bolt punched through armor that could stop bullets and sent the alien warrior staggering backward. Green blood splattered the trees behind it. The creature roared in pain and surprise. In 1,000 hunts across 100 worlds, no prey had ever drawn first blood. It spun toward Lisa's position and returned fire, with a weapon that turned trees into ash. Sam was already moving, circling around to attack from the side. Tony charged straight forward with a knife in each hand. Carl threw his explosives in a high arc that brought them down behind the alien's position. The battle lasted 30 seconds. When the smoke cleared, the shadow blade lay dead among the broken trees. Its perfect armor was cracked and smoking. Its advanced weapons were scattered across the jungle floor. Jake walked over to the body and picked up the alien's rifle. The weapon was lighter than anything Earth produced, but felt solid in his hands. "Strip everything useful," he ordered. "Weapons, armor, equipment. Leave nothing for the next one." Lisa knelt beside the dead hunter and studied its face. Reptilian, features frozen in an expression of shock and disbelief. "You know what this means?" she said. "What?" "They're not gods. They're not unstoppable killing machines. They're just soldiers with better equipment. And now we have their equipment." Sam held up a communication device he had taken from the body. Alien voices chattered in their language while status lights blinked red and green. "They know one of their hunters is dead. The others will be coming." "Good," Jake replied, as he shouldered the alien rifle. "Let them come. We've got a message to send." Dr. Brooks looked down at the dead shadow blade with professional interest. "I count 4 bullet wounds and blast damage from the explosives. But look at this." She pointed to the creature's neck, where Carl's knife had found the gap in its armor. "That's what killed it. A blade thrust between the vertebrae." "Ancient technique," Carl said with satisfaction. "Some things never go out of style." Jake activated his radio and sent a signal on the emergency frequency all the human teams would be monitoring. 3 short bursts, then 2 long ones, then 3 short bursts again. The old SOS signal, but modified to carry a different message. "Enemy down. Take their weapons. Fight back." Across the hunting preserve, other human teams heard the signal and understood. The prey had just become predators. The signal fire burned bright against the night sky. Jake had built it on a hill overlooking a river valley where 2 other human groups had made camp. Smoke rose straight up in the still air, carrying a message in the old military code that any Earth soldier would recognize. "Enemy killed. Rally point established. Come if you can." 3 days had passed since the first shadow blade died. Jake's team had grown from 4 to 18 as other survivors found their way to the signal. Not all the news was good. Dr. Brooks arrived with only half her original group. The others had been picked off one by one while crossing open ground, near the river. Tony Martinez stumbled into camp just after sunset with a plasma burn across his back and rage burning in his eyes. They got Rodriguez and Chen while we were setting up an ambush, he reported. But we took another one of those shadow blade things with us. Caught it in a deadfall trap. Lisa Carter sat cleaning the alien weapon she had claimed from their first kill. The plasma rifle was lighter than Earth weapons but packed more punch than anything in human arsenals. She had figured out how to recharge it using power cells scavenged from dead shadow blades. That makes 4 confirmed kills, she said without looking up from her work. Word is spreading to the other groups. The aliens are starting to lose more hunters than they planned. Carl Jensen looked up from the explosive device he was building. His hands moved with the confidence of a man who had spent 20 years making things explode. I've been thinking about their tactics. These shadow blades are used to hunting alone. They rely on stealth and superior weapons to pick off isolated targets. But we're not fighting like prey, Jake finished the thought. We're fighting like soldiers. A new voice spoke from the edge of the firelight. That's exactly right. A woman stepped into the circle of light carrying an alien rifle and wearing armor pieces stripped from dead hunters. Her name was Kelly Wright, and she had been a combat engineer before the aliens took her. My group ran into 3 shadow blades. Yesterday, she continued. They expected us to scatter when they attacked. Instead, we formed a defensive perimeter and concentrated our fire, killed 2 of them before the 3rd one retreated. Jake studied the newcomer. Her clothes were torn and she had cuts on her face, but her eyes were steady and her hands were calm. How many in your group now? 8. Lost 4 in the fighting, but we learned something important. The shadow blades communicate with each other through some kind of radio system built into their helmets. When one of them dies, the others know about it immediately, which means they know we're not running scared, Tony said. They know we're fighting back. Lisa finally looked up from her weapon. Good, let them know. I want them to be afraid for once. Dr. Brooks finished bandaging a wounded Marine and joined the conversation. We need to think about more than just killing shadow blades. We need to think about getting out of here alive. Jake nodded toward the mountains visible in the distance. Kelly, did your group find anything that looked like a boundary to this preserve? Maybe. There's a force field about 20 miles north of here. Invisible wall that stretches as far as we could see in both directions. Touch it and you get knocked down by some kind of energy pulse. Carl's eyes lit up. Energy field means generators. Generators can be broken if you know what you're doing. It won't be that simple, Kelly warned. The field is guarded. We saw at least 6 shadow blades patrolling the perimeter. 6 we can handle, Jake said. The question is whether we can take out the generators before reinforcements arrive. A rustling in the bushes made everyone reach for their weapons, but the figure that emerged from the darkness was human. A young man with sergeant's stripes on his torn uniform stumbled into the firelight. Peterson, 1st Infantry, he gasped. Got separated from my group 2 days ago. Been tracking your smoke signal. Dr. Brooks moved to help him, but Peterson waved her away. I'm fine, but I've got information you need. There's a monitoring station about 10 miles east of here. Big building built into the side of a cliff. That's where they're watching us. Jake leaned forward. How do you know? Saw the antenna arrays, satellite dishes, communication equipment, and I saw something else. Peterson's voice dropped to a whisper. There are more humans in there. Prisoners from previous hunts. They're keeping them alive for some reason. The camp went silent except for the crackling of the fire. Jake felt something cold settle in his stomach. How many? Hard to tell from the outside. Maybe 20 or 30. They looked like they'd been there for a while. Lisa stood up and checked the charge on her weapon. Then we go get them. It's a fortress, Peterson warned. Walls 20 feet high, guard towers, energy weapons covering every approach. Fortresses can be taken, Carl said quietly, especially if the people inside think they're safe. Tony Martinez grinned for the first time since arriving at the camp. I like the sound of this. When do we move? Jake looked around the circle of faces lit by firelight. These were not the same people who had been loaded onto the prison transport 4 days ago. Those had been defeated prisoners waiting to die. These were soldiers who had remembered what they were fighting for. We split into 3 teams, he decided. One team hits the monitoring station and rescues the prisoners. One team takes out the generators on the boundary field. The third team creates a diversion to draw the shadow blades away from both targets. What about extraction? Dr. Brooks asked. Even if we break the force field, we're still trapped on an alien world. Kelly Wright smiled grimly. I saw something else during my scouting. There's a landing pad near the monitoring station. 3 ships sitting on it, not prison transports, fast attack craft. Can you fly alien ships? Jake asked. I flew everything Earth ever built. How different can it be? Jake stood up and kicked dirt over the signal fire. The flames died, plunging the camp into darkness broken only by alien stars overhead. Then we have a plan. Rest for 2 hours. Then we move. As the humans settled in for a brief sleep before the mission, none of them noticed the tiny drone hovering in the darkness above their camp. In the monitoring station, Vextar watched the feed with growing alarm. These creatures were not behaving like prey at all. They were planning coordinated military strikes against fortified positions. They were thinking like conquerors. For the first time in his long career, the alien commander felt something he had never experienced before while watching the Great Hunt. He felt afraid. The monitoring station rose from the cliff face like a metal tumor. Alien architecture twisted upward in impossible angles that hurt human eyes to look at. Searchlights swept back and forth across the rocky ground below, while guard towers bristled, with weapons that could vaporize a man in seconds. Jake crouched behind a boulder 50 yards from the main gate and studied the fortress through stolen alien binoculars. Beside him, Lisa counted the guards visible on the walls. Tony Martinez examined the approach routes while Carl Jensen sketched the layout of defensive positions. 12 shadow blades on the walls, Lisa whispered. More inside, probably. Those guard towers have overlapping fields of fire, no way to approach without being seen. Unless we give them something else to look at, Jake replied. 2 miles away, Kelly Wright led her team toward the force field generators. 8 humans moved through the darkness carrying weapons they had stripped from dead hunters and explosives that Carl had made from salvaged materials. Their job was to blow a hole in the prison that had held them for 4 days. On the far side of the valley, Dr. Brooks waited with the third team. They had no weapons except what they could improvise and no military training except what they had learned in the past few days. But they had something more important. They had nothing left to lose. Jake checked his watch. 2 minutes until Brooks starts the diversion. Everyone remember the plan. We go in fast and we go in hard. Find the prisoners and get them to the landing pad. The first explosion lit up the night sky like a small sun. Dr. Brooks and her team had found the fuel depot for the monitoring station and turned it into the biggest firework display in the planet's history. Burning fuel rained down from the sky while secondary explosions shook the ground. Every guard in the fortress turned toward the flames. Searchlights swung away from the main gate to illuminate the burning depot. Shadow blades poured out of the guard towers and ran toward the source of the explosion. Now, Jake whispered. His team sprinted across the open ground toward the unguarded gate. Lisa had memorized the door mechanism from watching the guards. Her fingers flew over the alien controls until the massive portal swung open with a grinding sound. Inside the fortress, emergency lights bathed everything in red. Alarms screamed warnings in the alien language while automated voices announced damage reports. The corridors were empty except for the sound of running feet echoing from distant sections. Jake led his team deeper into the complex, following the building plans that Peterson had sketched from memory. Down 3 levels, past empty guard posts, and monitoring stations where alien technicians had abandoned their posts to fight the fire outside. They found the prison block behind a door marked with symbols that looked like screaming faces. Tony kicked the door open and stepped inside with his weapon ready. What he saw made him forget about the war for a moment. Human beings sat in cages barely large enough for dogs. Men and women who had once been soldiers and explorers and pioneers, reduced to broken shadows of themselves. Some looked up when the door opened. Others just stared at the walls with eyes that had seen too much. Earth military, Jake announced. We're here to get you out. An older man in the nearest cage lifted his head. His hair had gone white, and scars covered his arms like a map of old battles. You're the ones they've been hunting. We heard the explosions. Thought you were all dead by now. Not yet, Lisa replied as she worked on the cage locks with tools Carl had made. How long have you been here? 2 years. Maybe 3. Hard to tell time in this place. The old man struggled to his feet as his cage door swung open. They use us for medical experiments, testing how much pain different species can endure. More cages opened. 26 human prisoners stumbled out into the corridor. Some could barely walk. Others had injuries that would need immediate medical attention. All of them had the hollow look of people who had given up hope long ago. Can you fight? Jake asked the old man. Give me a weapon and point me at the enemy. The reply came without hesitation. Carl handed out the spare weapons they had brought. The landing pad is 2 levels up. We move fast and we stick together. Anyone who can't keep up gets carried. They move through the fortress like ghosts seeking revenge. The rescued prisoners might have been broken by months of captivity, but they remembered their training. They formed a defensive formation around the wounded and moved with the silent precision of soldiers who had fought together before. The landing pad sat on top of the fortress like a metal field under the alien stars. 3 ships waited there, exactly as Kelly had reported. Sleek attack craft built for speed and firepower. Jake had never seen anything like them, but Kelly was already running her hands over the controls of the nearest ship. I can fly this, she called out. Basic principles are the same. Engines, navigation, weapon systems. Give me 5 minutes to figure out the startup sequence. Behind them, the sound of running feet echoed from the stairwell. The Shadow Blades had realized that the fuel depot explosion was a diversion. They were coming back to defend their fortress. 4 minutes, Jake told Kelly as he positioned his people around the landing pad. The first Shadow Blade emerged from the stairwell and died before it could raise its weapon. Lisa's shot took its head, clean off. The second one made it 3 steps before Tony's plasma rifle burned a hole through its chest. But more were coming. Jake could hear them in the stairwell. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The entire garrison was returning to defend their prize. 2 minutes, Kelly called out. The ship's engines were starting to warm up with a sound like controlled thunder. Carl threw his last grenade down the stairwell. The explosion collapsed part of the ceiling and bought them a few more seconds. But it would not be enough. There were too many enemies, and not enough time. Jake, the old prisoner called out. His name was Frank Morrison, and he had been a colonel before the aliens took him. There's something you need to know about this place. It's not just a monitoring station. It's the command center for the entire preserve. What does that mean? It means if we can get to the main computer, we can shut down every system on this planet. The force fields, the orbital defenses, everything. Jake looked at the ship where Kelly was frantically working on the controls. Then he looked at the stairwell where plasma bolts were starting to fly up from the floors below. Finally, he looked at the 26 rescued prisoners who were depending on him to get them home. He made his choice. Lisa, Tony, get everyone on that ship. Frank, show me where that computer is. Jake, no, Lisa said. We stick together. Someone has to shut down those defenses or none of us will make it off this planet. Get them out of here. That's an order. The ship's engines roared to life as the first Shadow Blades reached the landing pad. Jake and Frank Morrison disappeared back into the fortress, while plasma fire filled the air around the escaping ship. The real battle was just beginning. The computer room lay deep in the heart of the fortress. Banks of alien machines lined the walls while holographic displays showed the status of every system on the planet. Frank Morrison ran his hands over the controls like a pianist finding familiar keys. 20 years I worked with alien technology as a prisoner. He muttered as screens flickered to life around them. Never thought I'd be grateful for the education. Jake stood guard at the door while explosions echoed through the corridors outside. The Shadow Blades were fighting room by room to reach them. Every few seconds, plasma bolts lit up the hallway like deadly lightning. How long do you need? Jake asked. 5 minutes to shut down the orbital defenses, 10 minutes to collapse the entire network. Frank's fingers flew over the alien keyboard. But first I'm going to send a message that will reach every corner of the galaxy. The main display flickered and changed. Instead of system readouts, it now showed the recording equipment that had been watching the hunt for the past 5 days. Frank accessed the stored files and began broadcasting them on every communication frequency the Zephyrians used. Across the galaxy, beings who had lived under alien rule for centuries watched 50 humans turn the Great Hunt into a war. They saw Lisa Carter pick off shadow blades with precision shots. They watched Tony Martinez charge straight at enemies twice his size. They witnessed Dr. Brooks lead wounded civilians to safety while under fire. Let them see what humans do when cornered, Frank said as he uploaded the files. Let every slave world know that the shadow blades can be killed. The door behind them exploded inward. 3 shadow blades rushed through the smoke with weapons blazing. Jake dove behind a computer console as plasma bolts turned the air around him into fire. He came up shooting with the alien rifle he had claimed during the rescue. His first shot missed. His second shot burned through the lead shadow blade's armor and sent it crashing to the floor. The third alien warrior threw something that looked like a metal ball. Jake rolled away as the grenade exploded and filled the room with deadly fragments. Frank never stopped working at the computer. Blood ran down his face from shrapnel cuts, but his hands stayed steady on the controls. Orbital defenses are down, he announced. Ships can get through now. The last shadow blade advanced on Jake's position with a weapon that crackled with energy. Jake had 1 shot left in his rifle. He took careful aim and squeezed the trigger. Nothing happened. The power cell was dead. The alien raised its weapon for the killing shot. Then Frank Morrison proved that 20 years of captivity had not broken his fighting spirit. The old colonel tackled the shadow blade from behind and drove a piece of broken metal deep into its neck. Planetary systems are offline, Frank gasped as the alien died. Force fields, communications, everything. But I can't stop the self-destruct sequence. This whole place is going to blow in 3 minutes. Jake helped the wounded man to his feet. Can you walk? I can run if I have to. They stumbled through corridors filled with smoke and falling debris. Behind them, the computer room erupted, in flames as the fortress began to tear itself apart. Emergency systems screamed warnings while structural supports gave way with sounds like breaking bones. The landing pad was empty except for bodies and burning wreckage. The ships were gone. Jake felt his heart sink until he heard the sound of engines approaching from above. Kelly Wright brought her stolen ship down through the smoke like an angel of rescue. "Where have you been?" she shouted over the noise of the engines. "Saving the galaxy," Jake replied as he helped Frank into the ship. "Now get us out of here before this place becomes a crater." The ship lifted off just as the fortress collapsed in on itself. The explosion lit up half the continent and sent shockwaves rippling across the planet's surface. From orbit, it looked like a new volcano had been born. Kelly piloted their ship through the debris field where the orbital defense stations had been. Twisted metal and burning plasma marked the graves of weapons that had kept the planet isolated for generations. The way home was finally open. "Message coming in from the other ships," Kelly announced. "All survivors are accounted for. 28 humans rescued from the prison, 15 who survived the hunt. We're all going home." Jake slumped in his seat and felt exhaustion wash over him like a tide. 5 days ago he had been a prisoner waiting to die for alien entertainment. Now he was the survivor of a battle that would change the galaxy forever. "What happens now?" Frank asked as Earth grew larger in their view screen. "Now we prepare for war," Jake replied. "The Zephyrians won't forgive this. They'll come for Earth with everything they have." "Good," Frank said with a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. "Let them come. They wanted to see what humans do. When we're hunting, they're about to get a demonstration." The stolen ships limped into Earth's solar system 3 weeks later. Jake Morrison's report reached military headquarters within hours. The recordings Frank had broadcast were already spreading across the galaxy like wildfire. On 100 slave worlds, beings who had never known hope began to plan their own rebellions. The Great Hunt of Cathera had ended with 43 human survivors instead of 0. But more importantly, it had ended with the galaxy's most feared, warriors learning what it meant to be afraid. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through fear for 3,000 years. Now they would discover what happened when that fear turned around and came hunting for them. Jake Morrison had kept his promise to the 49 who died. The galaxy would remember what humans could do when pushed too far. And in the darkness, between the stars, other predators were already planning their response to the species that refused to be prey. The hunt was over. The war was just beginning.